Smarties, today we discuss the many reasons why some learners don't want educational therapy. We chat about why a learner's willingness to participate is actually not a prerequisite to hiring an educational therapist at Kapp Educational Therapy Group or M.Ed therapist. If you are interested in discussing this idea as a clinician, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Steph and I both have one slot currently available for business coaching, and you can email us at rachelandsteph@learnsmarterpodcast.com and we'll get you in. We love doing the business coaching. Let's dig in.
You want to learn faster, but sometimes working harder is just not the answer. You have to learn smarter. The Educational Therapy Podcast.
Hi, Smarties. Welcome to episode 310 of Learn Smarter, the Educational Therapy Podcast. I'm Stephanie Pitts.
And I'm Rachel Kapp.
And today we're talking about the learners who don't want educational therapy.
So this comes up all the time.
Yeah, it does.
We both do the intake calls for both of our practices. So hint, if you want to have a conversation with us, sign up for a phone call on either of our websites, www.myedtherapist.com to chat with Steph or www.kappedtherapy.com to chat with me. And this is one of the questions that we ask families is, what's the learner's willingness to participate? And there's a lot of reasons from a business side that we want to have that conversation with parents. It matters in terms of which clinician we're going to pair you up with usually. Mm-hmm. But it actually is not a prerequisite. Like, a learner's reluctance is not a deal breaker in this whole thing. So this typically emerges with middle schoolers and older, but we want to chat today about why learners don't want educational therapy or why they think they don't want it, and then why it almost doesn't matter depending on sort of parenting dynamics. So Steph, why don't learners want to engage in educational therapy? What do you think?
Okay, so I think the first thing is they don't really know what it is.
Right.
A lot of them come to us having hours and hours and hours of tutoring.
Yep. We often say that's like a red flag, right? If a learner's having hours and hours and hours of tutoring, it's a red flag about needing more support. It's not necessarily a red flag about the school.
Right.
Which parents often think.
So yeah, I think that is the first and foremost. And the second thing is it feels like something extra. Mm-hmm. It's hard. You don't go to the gym and get a six-pack. It's not super fun. I mean, some people find it's fun, but no part of me is finding that fun. So it feels like extra work. And when it's hard work, you don't want to do it. Hence why I don't have a six-pack.
Right. Almost sometimes in addressing this, particularly with the older students, we're really asking them to face that it's hard. Facing things can be really, really difficult. Sometimes learners are also school avoidant.
Right.
And they don't want to engage in this. It doesn't make them feel good. It's not how they get esteem. It's not their current priority. Learners with school refusal, same thing.
Yep.
I think sometimes having the title therapist in our title is a stopgap for both parents and learners alike. And if your learner is one of those kids who's going to kind of balk at that, then I wouldn't even use that word. I would just say coach. Learners are usually amenable to coaching, and we are not coaches. Coaches work differently than the way that we work. But for the purposes of helping learners to understand what it is that we do. And we'll go ahead and link episode 99 where we talk about how to explain educational therapy to your learner. And we talk about this idea of coaching instead in that episode. And so we'll link that episode in the show notes. But one of the things when we were writing this episode, because like I said, we have this conversation all day, every day with parents who are calling. It's not a deal breaker for working with our practices. If you're a clinician listening to this and you've never even thought of the idea of deal breakers with clients, definitely sign up for a coaching call with us because it's something we think about. And it's not a deal breaker for us. And we can only speak to the work that we do in our two practices. But in our two practices, personality match and expertise of clinician is important above all else, including whether or not the session is in person or virtual. If we had to pick our priorities, clinician match and schedule, because there's a logistical component, that matters above everything else. Because we each have clinicians in both of our practices who are experts at working with kids who are reluctant. That's their jam. That's what they love to do. And so that's why we ask that question of families when they're calling initially. And the learner's desire to participate isn't a prerequisite. Now, this leaves me to something that is more of a prerequisite in that the parent has to have the authority to sort of force the learner into it a little bit.
Right.
And the buy-in can take a while, but the reason the learner has stayed that long and not thrown such a fit, because I would say maybe you're going to have in both of our practices like a few sessions, like those initial sessions that they're really stamping their feet about. But the reason that that sort of dissipates, even if they're reluctant about the process, is because they like who they're working with, which is why clinician fit matters above all else. It's also about how you frame this for them. It does not have to be punitive. It does not have to be a punishment. It's an offering. It's an opportunity. But it also has the added benefit, and we always say this, that good intervention from our practices means that family and home life improves.
Yep.
And so when there is tension and there is struggle in the home about learning, about school, homework, all that sort of stuff, it really does disrupt family and home life and peace. And when you have a learner who's, in middle school or already in high school, parents only have a few more years. It's that whole thing, like you only get 18 summers with your kids, that horrible thing that went around. Mm-hmm. But they only have a few more years. And we always say, like, what do you want those years to look like? Because I guarantee you parents don't want it to look like fighting about school.
No.
If you've been thinking, I really think my kid would benefit, I think our family would benefit from working with Rachel or Steph's practice, but they are not going to be into it, moving along. Go to the next step and at least have the phone call and let's chat about it. You can sign up on our websites, www.kappedtherapy.com or www.myedtherapist.com.
Have a great week.
Have a great week, Smarties.